Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Skolnick. I'm manager of energy services at Lincoln Electric System, and welcome to our Plug-in Drivers Rock concert. This is probably one of the biggest crowds we've ever had for a public meeting, and I am not surprised. Folks who own electric vehicles, hybrids or all electrics, tend to be very passionate people. And so we are delighted that you took time out of your schedule to come and to learn a little bit about what we're up to and what we're interested in doing in the realm of electric vehicles. I thought I would start by asking a couple of questions just to gauge what we've got here. How many of you have owned an electric vehicle for at least 10 or more years? Don Cox. Okay. That question was for you, by the way, right?
I suspect it, Mark.
Who invented the electric vehicle? Don Cox, right? No, his friend Elon Musk, maybe. Okay. How many of you have owned an electric vehicle for at least 8 years? 5 years? Okay, there's our early adopters. Don is our early adopter. How about the last 3 years? Within 3 years? 3 or more years? 1 year? How many have just in the last year or two? Okay, all right. Good. How many of you are on your second electric vehicle? Okay. Now I assume that none of you are going back, right? Once you get into the electric vehicle, you're not going back to that other type, right? Okay. So that's one question I wanted to get, just to get a sense of what kind of veteran ownership we've got here. Here's an interesting question I'd like to ask you. Which of the following primary reasons motivated you to get a plug-in vehicle? Has to be the primary, so I'm looking for the one primary reason. Raise your hand if it was economics. Economics.
What are the choices?
Oh. What are the choices? All right, I will read them off. Economics, environmental, technology guru, or other. Now, if you say other, I'm going to call on you and have you share what that other is. Okay, so those are the four choices. It was economics, environmental, technology, or other.
How about all the above?
Can't do that. It has to be a primary reason. You're trying to change the rules. All right, raise your hand if it was primarily economics. About 4 of you. Okay. Environmental stewardship. Aha. How about I'm a tech geek? I love technology. Look at Don. Okay. So economics third, technology second, environmental number one. Other? Is there anybody who had another? Yes, sir.
Additional power.
What's that?
Additional power.
So is this like,
Hybrid.
oh, you want, okay, so it's a hybrid, and explain that a little more, additional power?
It's a two-motor vehicle, so with the gas engine, you get 270 horsepower, and if the electric motor kicks in the rear axle, you get 400 horsepower.
Do you like that feeling of power?
Actually, we use it more to drive around town and just plug in the electric, but yeah.
Okay, all right, good. HP, were you another one? Did you?
Just oil imports, local fuel.
Okay, all right, more energy independence. Okay, who else raised their hand for other? W. Don.
I was a member of the utility board. I thought I should set
A good example. That would fall under other. There aren't too many that could say that. Who else rose? Yes, sir.
They recalled my Volkswagen Golf diesel, which was a big polluter.
Okay,
So that was the reason I made the change.
okay. And now what do you drive?
An electric Volkswagen.
An electric Volkswagen.
E-Golf.
An e-Golf, okay. Great. Who else? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a woman, of course. I hate gasoline engine cars. I hate putting gas in them. I hate the I don't know, heaviness, the dirtiness. Electric cars are so clean. I love getting in it. I just plug it in, unplug it, drive it, no problem.
Okay. Awesome. That's a lot of things. Simplicity. Okay.
I like the simplicity.
I like that. Thank you. That's great. Who else put other? All right. Dawn?
I'll respond for my wife. She would be where this lady is here, on convenience.
Convenience and simplicity.
Simplicity
Okay,
and
okay.
convenience.
And people's lives are kind of crazy, so simplicity is often a big motivator. That is really interesting, thank you. I've got one more question. How many of you know someone in town, not in this room, who owns a plug-in vehicle? Okay, so that's an important question, because we're going to tell you a lot about what we're doing in the area of electric vehicles. But one of the major initiatives we're undertaking is to recruit more LES customers who own plug-in vehicles to participate in this study. And I'll just tell you that we had a breakfast about 4 to 6 weeks ago with 11 plug-in vehicle owners, and it was simply based on who we knew owned a plug-in vehicle. And we had 11 show up. And in the span of just 1.5 months, we now have about 40 of you here tonight, okay? My guess is that each of you know somebody else in Lincoln or Waverly that drives a plug-in vehicle. Not everybody, but many of you. So you should have gotten a sheet for you to put names and contact information for anybody else you know who lives in Lincoln or Waverly that drives a plug-in vehicle. And our goal for this study is to get at least 50 people, and we're going to blow through that if we have some help in identifying who those people are. So please, we've got several ways for you to do this. One is that sheet that each of you should have received. You can leave that behind tonight. You also are going to find these little plugs. I forgot to, okay? Take one or more of these, and as you're out and you see a plug-in vehicle, preferably a Lincoln, if you can tell it's a Lincoln plate, we don't want anybody else other than Lincoln and Waverly, put this under their windshield. It's amazing, some of you learned about this study through this little plug, okay? And of course, you can always tweet or Facebook or whatever you do on social media to promote it. So, I am going to tell you a little bit, what's that? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, HP. No, we're not capping at 50. And by the way, you're one of the rock star recruiters as well as Don Cox. These two fellows are responsible for a lot of you being here because he's taken pictures of cars that have the plug underneath it. So he's out there actively looking. Now I saw a Tesla driving down Odin. I just about ready to leapt out onto that vehicle. But then I thought I wouldn't make it here tonight if I did that. But I said, I want that Tesla. So
okay, hold on, I got to interject. So when he says Paul takes pictures of these, Paul is like a big game hunter. We get these beautiful portraits of all these vehicles. I envision like in his man cave in his den, he's got these pictures all up on the wall.
And diversity.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
It's
yeah,
like
rare finds.
He's exactly like my kids catching Pokemon.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
It's great. It has been so awesome. We have such a diversity of vehicles and people here. It is just terrific. I want to give you just a little bit of background about where LES is as it relates to electric vehicles. There hasn't been a whole bunch of noise about what we've been doing, but we've been doing a lot, and we want you to know what we're doing, and we want you to share the story of what we've been doing. Last year, we did our 5-year integrated resource plan project in which we look at all of our generating resources and we look at all of our different energy efficiency and demand side management programs, which is required, and it's an exercise that we go through to make sure that we're using our resources efficiently and to look at any plans that we may need for additional generation. We currently don't have any immediate needs for additional generation for a variety of factors. Energy efficiency is a big one because appliances have become more efficient. But in the course of putting this together, we said, you know what? We better start thinking about electric vehicles. We don't know how quickly they're going to come. We don't even know how many own plug-in vehicles in our service territory. Not an easy number to come by the way. So Scott and I worked together on this, and we said, this ought to be something that we begin to look at. There is so much news and information about electric vehicles now, it is unbelievable. So we put in there that we were going to look at a possible pilot, but we didn't know exactly what it would look like. But we wanted to do something in the space of electric vehicles. And I can tell you there were one of two directions we could have taken. One is we could have said, we're going to start to promote electric vehicles. We're going to start to provide incentives for purchase. We're going to start putting in public charging stations. We're going to start incenting home charging stations. We could have gone down that path. What we decided is, you know what? We've got a lot of questions. We don't know what's the best way to use ratepayer money, because that's what we're using when we provide incentives. What's the best way to invest ratepayer money? What is the impact of electric vehicles on our system? What are the potential benefits? What are the potential challenges? So we began to ask questions. And we found that we had more questions than answers. What is the overall awareness of our customers about electric vehicles? Do people have myths about electric vehicles? What is the adoption forecast? You know, I'm sure many of you are read up on different predictions. But we wanted to maybe get some firsthand knowledge on some of this type of thing. So we had more questions than answers. And so rather than just start going down a path of offering of a variety of programs, we wanted to have some data-driven decisions. No, they buy that information. Yes, they can tell me the number of all electrics. They can't tell me how many hybrids we have, plug-in hybrids. They lump them all together. Well, there's a big difference.
I seem to remember, though, looking that up, that there's a pie chart of all, and it's just Nebraska. It's
Right.
not by service area, but I thought the all-electric were separate.
They are. They are. You are right. But the plug-in hybrids are lumped together with the non-plug-in hybrids.
Oh, I see.
And I got to tell you, this was... What's that? Yeah, a lot of people do. And you know, I was really surprised because we said, well, we'll just call it the DMV. They'll send us over numbers. We'll be great. They can tell us who owns it. It's all perfect. They buy that data. They don't even ask for it. You know, there's a lot of institutions that have not adjusted to a plug-in future at all. And that's one of them. Our ability to secure information about who owns, in our service territory, a plug-in vehicle had to be achieved through viral networking. And look at where we're at with that. But we couldn't just, we even went to the clearinghouse for all data related to vehicles, and they wouldn't share the information. They wouldn't even share it. And Scott will tell you how much effort we put into trying to get it.
Lots of effort. Because every time Mark would say, I can't get it, I'd say, Mark, you got to try another avenue.
So it's been a real challenge, but we're getting progress.
Mark, we have a Volt, and there is a club for Volt owners. We call ourselves Voltarians. But anyway,
Voltarian.
you can go in there and you can find all kinds of information about Volt.
Do you have in-person meetings
They do.
here in Lincoln?
I don't think yet, I'm not sure.
We need to have in-person. I want to meet.
You can find all kinds of information in there about who owns them, where they're at.
If that group has in-person meetings in Lincoln, we would love to be there. If they have in-person meetings in the Bahamas, I would love to be there. Okay?
He'll ask Kevin. He'll ask Kevin for, right? You'll get that approved. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 3 initiatives. Okay? I'm going to have Scott talk about the first initiative. I'm going to talk about the second initiative, and then he'll talk about the big reason you're here. Okay? So I'm going to turn this over to Scott.
I'm Scott Benson. I missed the introductions because Mark started without me, but that's okay.
It was 6:05.
So the first thing we did is we said, you know what? If people are going to bring electric vehicles to our service territory, we've got to know what's the net benefit to LES from an economic standpoint. And when I say the benefit to LES, that's really the net benefit to all of our other customers, okay? So we said, well, we've got to break this down and model it. How are we going to do that? Well, we do modeling all the time, and one of the things we look at are our demand-side management programs that are under what we call at LES the Sustainable Energy Program. Raise your hand if you know what the Sustainable Energy Program is. It's okay, if you don't, I'm going to tell you. All right. I bet most people in the room may know that LES will give you an incentives, payments, if you put in a higher efficiency air conditioner than maybe you normally would, right? Because we're helping you help us. You're going to use our product more efficiently. And so we have to evaluate that because we've got to figure out the incentive we should pay, what's the net benefit or cost to LES. That's what you call a load shedding program. Because if we give somebody an incentive to put in a better air conditioner or a business puts in better lighting, they're going to shed load. They're going to use less of our product. Well, what's an electric vehicle or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle? That's what we call a load building program, right? Because we're going to sell energy where we didn't used to. They used to buy gas, and now they're going to buy electricity. So he said, okay, we're going to look at modeling this the same way we model all those programs under the Sustainable Energy Program, or SEP. And what you're going to find is it just flips the model on its head. So when we have the Sustainable Energy Program, first thing we say is, well, what are going to be the benefits to LES? How are we going to benefit if somebody puts in a better air conditioner than maybe they would have without our help? Well, LES, we're part of what's called the Southwest Power Pool. That's an electricity market. Runs from about northern Texas up to the Canadian border, right through the Midwest. We're right in the middle of it. And under that market now, we buy all of the energy to serve our load from the Southwest Power Pool every day. And so if somebody puts in a better air conditioner than they would have, what's that mean? It's running more efficiently. They're using less energy. That's less energy we have to go out and buy from the market. That's a good thing. Does that kind of make sense? And if somebody's using less energy, especially at our peak time, that 1 hour of the year that we build the entire system to handle, and that's usually 5, 6 o'clock in July, all the industry's still running, but everybody ran home and they kind of turned down their air conditioner, they're cooking on their oven and their stove, right? That's our peak hour we got to build for. So if somebody has a better air conditioner than they maybe would have, our peak demand goes down, and what's that mean? It means our next generating resource that supplies that load, that gets to move further out in the future. Those things are expensive, so the longer we can defer one of those investments, the better. So there's another benefit we get. We're going to save that money in our pocket for a while. And then last one is, as part of the Southwest Power Pool, all the transmission, the lines and wires you see running around the country delivering that power, those costs are socialized. We all share in building that across the entire SPP footprint. And they say the way we're going to socialize that is pretty simple. We're going to look at your peak demand, that peak hour, and we're going to compare it to the peak demand of the entire Southwest Power Pool. And you're going to pay your share. So when you put in a little better air conditioner than what you would have, our peak goes down, which means our percentage of SPP's overall peak goes down, which means we pay a little bit less for all that transmission. So those are all the benefits. Somebody puts in a little better air conditioner. But what's the cost? Well, we sell electricity, and the cost is that customer is going to buy less of our product. And a lot of the costs that go in the electricity you purchase are fixed costs. Transformers, lines and wires, the system buildings like this, they don't change based on how much energy you use. And so when that person uses a little bit less energy because of that incentive payment we gave them, who do you think picks up the rest of those costs? All the rest of the customers. We do that kind of modeling all the time, but this was new. But it's going to sound real similar just from the other direction. So if you have a load building program, like somebody adds an electric vehicle, well, the first thing you say is, well, what are the benefits there? Well, I already told you, we sell electricity, and that person's going to buy more electricity, right? If you made Coke, this is like somebody buying 2 cans of Coke. That's a good deal. That helps out all the customers. But what are the costs? Now we got to go buy more energy from the market to serve that load. If they don't charge at the right time, our peak demand's going to go up. What's that mean? It means that next generating resource comes a little bit closer to today, and it also means we pay a higher share of those SPP costs. So that got a little bit down in the weeds. We want to give you a flavor of what's all included when we try to look at what's the net benefit or cost to LES of adding one of these to the system. So we worked with a consultant. We came up with some representative data. If you look at an electric vehicle, you have one electric vehicle, that's about 3,800 kilowatt hours a year. Okay, that's roughly about a third of an average house over a year's time. If you have a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, that's about half that, about 1,900. If you look at the peak demand, at its peak, what are they taking? Well, all electric's about 2.5 kW, plug-in hybrids about 2 kW, okay? So we looked at all that data and we said, all right, now we've got some ideas of what those numbers might be based on national averages. What's that do to our economic impact? This is what we came up with, but we had to do a range. Because one of the big kickers for us, we've been talking about it the last few minutes, is when are they charging? Are they charging on peak, 6 o'clock in the evening in July? Or are they charging off peak, 2 in the morning in July? There's a big difference to our costs. So what we did is we modeled over the whole range. And what's over here on your right-hand side, those numbers, that's if you assume everybody is charging off peak. They're all charging in the middle of the night in the summer. So if we look at the net benefit to LES, and this was over 10 years, and it's net present value, so we bring all the costs back to today, LES makes about $1,400. If it's a plug-in hybrid, we make about $700. But if you assume that all those people are charging on peak, always they're charging on peak, 6 o'clock in July in the evening. Well, for an all-electric vehicle, we go down to making about $300. That's the benefit to all the customers. If you're a plug-in hybrid, you see that number? It actually flipped. LES loses a couple $100. That's a big swing, all because of when people are charging that vehicle. Okay, we started this saying, boy, just like Mark said, we've got more questions than answers. So we're going to model this, we're going to work with the consultant and get some representative data, and we're going to figure this out. And you know what we were left with? Not much. Because we said, you know, if I can't tell you when that person's charging, I don't really have a number, right? I got a great big range. And on top of that, we used all those consultant data for kilowatt hours and peak. I don't know if any of that's right for Lincoln, Nebraska. So we had a gap. All that did was reinforce that we've got to continue to look at this. The model's great, but we've got to come up with some way to get better numbers to go into it. And that was kind of where we left off on the first step of our journey.
I have a suggestion for you. We have a Volt that's on 110, just, you know, common household energy. Takes about 12, maybe 13 hours to fully charge it from zero. If we had 240, we could do it in half of the time or less. That means we could charge it at night from midnight to 6 a.m. rather than from 6 a.m. or 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. So we could do, you know, different kind of charging. So I'm wondering if there's a possibility of subsidizing 240. It's kind of expensive. I think it's about $1,500 to $2,000 to put in a 240 charging in our garage.
I will tell you, put a pin in that thought, because that's the same things we're going through.
Okay. And
you're going to see some of the ideas we have here to try and get those answers. So good thought.
So the idea you thrown out, and there's so many different ideas about, you know, you need to maybe provide an incentive for that type of application, or you need to provide an incentive for the purchase to encourage people to purchase the electric vehicle. No, you need to put more money into charging stations in the malls and around the community. So, no, you need to develop a time of use. So there's all these different answers. There's all these different things that are going on. And we thought, you know what? Before we decide on answers, let's make sure we got the right questions and we use data to help us understand this a little better. So I appreciate where you're coming from, because that may be a conclusion that we're going to draw from this whole effort. I really do. Yes, Bob?
Number one is what is your definition of peak and off-peak?
So our peak typically occurs, as Scott was saying, between 4 and 7 o'clock in the summer months, June, July, and August. That's typically what our peak is.
The second thing, thinking back, we almost always plug in at night.
Mm-hmm.
Overnight, so most of the time it's not during that.
Correct. So,
And you could probably create some type of incentive programs. Most of us are plugging in our garages, so you just put something in where maybe they didn't kick in until 7 or 8 o'clock, so get on 6 and plug in. Doesn't start till after peak.
correct. And there's a lot of discussion about how we can make life simple for the plug-in owner so they don't even have to think about it. Again, these are things we're going to get to pull out of our study, because we all have gut thoughts about when people charge, but we're going to have a critical mass of customers that we're going to know. And that's what the beauty of this is. We're going to have data that we're going to be able to say, you see, this is what's going on, right? So your ideas are right on target, and I think we're going to be able to prove those out.
Solar chargers are feasible, they are in use. I know you have your solar energy project that we contribute to, but I'm wondering if you've looked at the possibility or the feasibility actually of home solar chargers. They are available.
So we've got more answers tonight. We should have
Yeah.
probably started here.
Now,
Yes.
we've looked at a lot of those things. You know, what you get into is there's a lot of things out there, but they don't all pass the cost-effective test. And that's the catch. So we'll go through here. I think you'll see where we're headed once we get towards the end.
So before we get to the actual electric vehicle charging study that we're going to be seeking participation on from you all and others. I do want to mention another study that we're doing that is more of a general public survey. You are all the choir. You're the, how many of you actually kind of tell others that they ought to get a plug-in vehicle? Have any of you done that? Non-cognitive. Well, a lot of you have, right? Okay. So the vast majority of our customers aren't aware of these, or if they think they're aware, they probably don't have all the facts, right? What we want to do is we want to go out to the general population, and we're going to work with the Electric Power Research Institute, EPRI, and we're one of 8 major utilities in the country that will be surveying a sample of our customers, most of whom don't even own a plug-in vehicle, to test their awareness and some other things. We're going to do that here in September. It's going to be online. It's going to be a random sample, approximately 400 of our customers. And we're going to seek out that awareness and their preferences and demographics and the key drivers and the key barriers to why they might purchase a plug-in vehicle. And through this effort, we will better understand where we're at as a community as it relates to awareness and as it relates to specific things that would keep people from purchasing an electric vehicle. We all have suppositions, range anxiety, right? People are afraid that they're not going to be able to. There's some range anxiety out there. There are people who think that an electric vehicle is twice the cost of a comparative gasoline vehicle. I mean, there's all these different thoughts out there. We're going to get an idea of what really is going on in our community as it relates to this. And the other piece of this is, boy, it'd be great if I had a crystal ball and I could tell when we're going to have a significant number of these vehicles. Because from the best of my knowledge and our ability to understand how many we have, somewhere between 250 and 300 vehicles, plug-in vehicles in our service territory. Okay, that's not a huge number compared to all the vehicles. At what point do we hit a tipping point though? At what point do we get into the thousands of vehicles? Then it becomes even a more critical thing to think about from an infrastructure standpoint. And ought we be pressing the accelerator, no pun intended, on trying to get to that point? So we're going to get some modeling out of this effort. Some of the questions: have you ever owned, driven, or ridden a plug-in vehicle? Friend, neighbor who owns one? Make, model of your last vehicle? When do you plan to make your next vehicle purchase? What are the kinds of things that might lean you towards purchasing a plug-in vehicle? Incentives on the purchase, or on a home charging station, or workplace charging, or public charging, more public charging. They'll be provided with discrete choices, so they'll be given different preferences or different basket of preferences, and to really begin to hone in on what's most important to each survey taker, so we can hone in on what's really driving potential adoption or what's keeping people back from purchasing a plug-in vehicle. So that is going to happen next month, okay? So we've done the modeling that Scott talked about, the benefit cost modeling. We're doing this. And the third initiative is why you're here tonight. And I'm going to turn this over to Scott to talk about the study.
Okay, now we get the exciting part. So we went through a bunch of stuff we didn't know, right? And so how do you start to get a handle on this? Well, you can really get a handle on it if you start to figure out, when are people charging? What kind of load are they putting on the system when they're charging, and where are they charging, right? Mark talked about, should you be putting your efforts towards residential chargers, or should they be towards public stations? And so we looked at how we're going to get that data. So the first thing we thought is, well, we'll just do it in our own wheelhouse. We've got meters that go on our larger commercial and industrial customers. They're a little more granular. We get peak data every 15 minutes. We could put that on somebody's house. The problem is we can't pick out your charging load from the rest of your load, right? So there are some other things. We thought, well, we could just do separate metering at somebody's home, and we'll just meter where the car plugs in. And that would get us all that data. The problem is that's kind of complicated, because now we got to come into your home, and if after a year or two we want to end the study and get that equipment back, we're going to come back into your home to take it out. That's problematic. The other thing we kept coming back to is, what if that person's not charging in their home? What if I go and I invest a lot of metering in your guys' home, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to know when they're charging and what kind of load, and then we find out that they charge at work every day. So we said, we got to come up with some way we can capture it. We need a meter that goes on somebody's car. And we found a unique solution. And that's a company called Fleet Karma. Fleet Karma uses a little device. I'm going to pass this around, and I do have to have it back. That plugs into the onboard diagnostic port of your vehicle. Every one since, I think it's the last 3 decades, every vehicle has one of these ports. You plug that in, and it's cellular enabled, and so it captures data. And it sends it back to Fleet Karma, and then we're able to get that. It's like having a meter on the car. Now, we're going to spend about $90,000 doing this study, but there's good news to that. The Sustainable Energy Program, what I talked about before, the incentive payments for better air conditioners and lighting and such, that's run under budget this year. And so that $90,000 is going to come out of that budget, so it's not a new budget item. So that's what we're going to talk about the rest of the day, is that program. That's the one that those of you who drive a electric vehicle or plug-in hybrid electric, we'd love to have you as part of the program. So how's that work? Well, the first thing you do is you got to go out to a website. You go on, it's super simple, and you enroll. You apply to be a part of the program. Fleet Karma hosts a website, it's all branded LES. And after you do that, Fleet Karma and LES, we're going to go through and look at the list. We had told you we're targeting 50 people. 50 is not a cap, but we do want to get a diverse array of vehicles, right? If we end up getting 45 people that sign up and they all drive a Leaf, we might not take 45 of them because we want to get a diverse set. So we're going to scan through that list. If you get selected, Fleet Karma is going to let you know, and they're going to mail that device to you. So who's got my device right over there? Okay, so hold it up. So if it disappears in the next 2 seconds, we know who stole it, all right? Okay, so they're going to mail you that device, and you go out and you plug it in. So no problem, you plug it in, it's going to take a couple of seconds. As soon as you plug it in, it's going to fire up, and through its cellular connection, it's going to call home, and Fleet Karma is going to know that everything's good. If there's a problem, they're going to reach out to you via email, give you a call and let you know, but probably going to be fine.
It'll work inside your garage.
Yep. And so what do we get from that? Well, if you're LES, every month we're going to get data, really good data for this part of the country. Because there's a lot of people who have collected data like this, but they're not here. They're usually on the coast, large metropolitan areas. They're not in the Midwest, in a city that experiences all 4 weather seasons to the extremes. That's kind of a big deal. And so what are we going to get out of this? Well, at a high level, we get charging data. We're going to know when that charging occurs, what kind of load it's putting on the system, and where it's happening. They're actually GPS enabled, so we record where that charging happens. And then we're also going to get trip data. On the trip data, we're going to know when that trip was taken, the distance covered, and the energy consumed. So that's what we get. What's the customer get? All of you folks, if we can get you signed up if you're an EV driver. Well, you're going to get $25 of on-bill credit when we start collecting the data. At the end of what would be a 2-year study, you're going to get $25 of on-bill credit for returning your little dongle. The thing I'm so worried about is it's going around the room, because that's LES in case we want to do this again. And then even more importantly, probably, throughout the study, you're going to get access either via the web or a mobile app to look at all your data, everything that's collected for you. And I should say, all this data is anonymized. So if everybody in this room signs up, we'll know you're signed up. We'll get to know you, we'll know your name, we'll know you're signed up, but we will not be able to tell which vehicle is yours. Everything gets anonymized before it's turned back to us. So here's a detailed list of the data, okay? So on the charging session side, what are we going to see? We'll know each time you plug in when that charging session started and when it stopped. We'll know the state of your battery charge when it started and when it stopped. We're also going to obviously get how much energy you consumed during that session and what your peak demand was you put on the system. And that's all broken down to 15-minute intervals, kind of matches the way we do billing, so it's nice apples to apples for us. And then we'll get that location via GPS. Now, we don't actually get GPS coordinates. It's mapped to a number of discrete zones. So what we'll get coded is they charged at their residence, or they charged at one of the public stations around town. We'll know if they charged in Lincoln. We'll know if they charged in Nebraska, and then there's other. Okay, so if you charge at home and you live here in town, it's going to come back to us coded as this charging session happened at their residence in Lincoln, in Nebraska. If you get up one morning and you drive across the river to Iowa and you charge while you're over there, it's going to come back coded as they charged in other. Now we'll get all the charging data. We get that regardless. We just won't know where other was, but that's okay. We think most of it's going to happen here. So that's what we get for charging session. What do we get on the trip side? Well, it starts off pretty similar. We're going to know when the trip started and when it stops. We'll know the state of the battery charge. So anybody not get the little dongle? Okay, right here. I was afraid you were doing a shell game, because if you act like you're going to pass it this way and act like you're going to pass it this way, then you're going to take it. All right. So trip data. We got start and stop of the trip. We got the state of your battery charge at the beginning of the trip and at the end. All right. We're going to know the distance you covered in miles. We're going to know the energy consumed, both electricity and if it's a hybrid on liquid fuel. We're going to know the percentage of miles that you traveled on electricity if it's a hybrid again. And then we've also got, where am I at my list? We're going to have the number of times you were idle, the percentage of time you sat idle, stoplights, things like that. We're going to know the ambient temperature and the auxiliary load, like when you're running your air conditioner or your heater, the radio, those kinds of things. So that's all the data that's going to be collected. Now I want to point out, because this is important to people and it should be, the GPS data is only when you're charging. If you read that list for trip data, there's no GPS. I don't care where you're driving. That doesn't matter to me. I do care where you're charging your car. That's what we want to find out. And so that's the data. Is everybody kind of clear on the data we'd be collecting? Okay.
Question.
Yes?
What are you defining as a trip?
A trip, I believe, is if you go out and start your car and you drive down the block and you stop your car, that's a trip. If you start your car and you drive for 300 miles and you stop it, that's a trip. One will say you went a half mile, one's going to say you went 300 miles. But each time you start and stop, that constitutes a trip.
How about 3,000?
If you can go 3,000 miles without stopping,
Heck of a hybrid.
you're heck of a hybrid. That's a heck of a man. You beat me.
What you're interested is that if it's not on your load.
We are, because part of this is gathering a lot of data for LES, right? And that's the key to this. We want to know how you guys are impacting our system. But believe me, there's a lot of people nationally that are interested in what we're doing here, because there haven't been a lot of studies in this kind of climate in the middle of the country. So that's why we want to collect data wherever. We want LES customers, but if you go drive around the country, we want to collect all that data. I saw some other hands.
When
We'll
you
go right
get
here.
back, are you going to tell us how many kilowatts we used and how much dollars it cost us to recharge for a year?
So on the first question, I won't have to tell you, because you're going to have access to that little mobile app and you're going to look it up. All this data, you're going to have that. Okay, you get to see this, you get more, they talk about your carbon footprint, those kind of things are in there. As far as the dollars, we'll have to apply our rate to that, but that's something we can help you do. It's pretty simple, right there.
Who else will this data go to be sold to?
Who else will the data be sold to? The data won't be sold to anybody else. So given to would be our partners, all right? So LES is using it. We are partnering with the University of Nebraska because they want to make this data available to the students and faculty so they can study it. We think that's great because those kids might find some things that we didn't think of looking at. And then depending on how much play we get nationally, there might be some other people who are helping us analyze the data, publishing about the data. But again, they're going to see the same anonymized set that we have. We're going to know you folks because we see you at meetings like this. The national people that would help us go through the data and do the analytics, they're not even going to know that much. But all they're going to see is car number 1 did this, car number 2 did this for all those different logs. Yeah, we'll follow up.
Can we see an example of the anonymized data at some point?
Yeah, that wouldn't be a problem. I will tell you, what we've got as an example, I haven't seen an actual log yet because we haven't started. But the example, imagine a spreadsheet with a column for all the stuff I got up there, right? And each vehicle gets a number. We just see a number. So it's vehicle number 1, vehicle number 4. We don't know who owns vehicle number 1, but the number is important because then we can track the performance of that vehicle in the summer, in the winter, in the shoulder months. Okay? All right, Paul, you had to.
Okay, so the data is anonymized, so you really don't know the size of the battery for each vehicle, except you can extrapolate that by using the beginning charge time, the ending charge time?
Nope, we will know that.
Oh, you will? Okay.
So with the vehicle number, they'll actually tell you this is vehicle number 1, and vehicle number 1 is a Nissan Leaf, and it's a 2016. We'll have that. Yep. So we can go back and do that kind of analysis after the fact.
Model S, you know
Yep. Yep, exactly. Yes, sir.
Okay, so on my house, I have solar panels, and I almost always charge at home. You're not really going to be capturing when I'm pulling power from the sun versus pulling power from the grid.
Nope. We'll just know when it.
Care about that?
You know, I can tell you, we've got a pretty good handle on when the solar's putting out energy. And so, now it'll be anonymized, so I won't know that. But we will be able to say if this person had solar on their home and it had a southern exposure and it was about this much, what would it do to that load? So we're going to be able to hypothetically play through that, even though I won't know what car it is. Now, you'll have the luxury of sitting at home and saying, aha, my solar was putting out that energy. Okay, who else? Right here.
You mentioned the data that LES will be receiving. I'm assuming that's a subset of the data that is going to Fleet Karma. Is that right?
No, so Fleet Karma is actually putting in filters that this is basically what they collect. The only thing I don't have up there that you will see if you decide to sign up, there's a little participation agreement. I didn't put it up here because it's not really data for the study. They collect the VIN number. So the VIN number goes to Fleet Karma. We don't get the VIN number, but they collect it for their troubleshooting purposes. But otherwise, other than VIN number, that's the data that they're collecting as well.
And realize we've signed a non-disclosure agreement with Fleet Karma, so they're not permitted to do anything with the data other than share it with us.
And you'll see,
They've done these studies with other utilities, so.
when we get to where you're actually looking at potentially enrolling, there's, like anything else, a participation agreement, and part of that is Fleet Karma's privacy policy, and you can read their policy on there.
You
Okay.
said this is you capture this cellularly. Can we do it with our iPhones?
I'm going to say every, but that's probably a mistake, but almost every mobile device you have, you should be able to look up that app and capture that data. If you're sitting at a computer, you should be able to get on the web and look at that data.
So we can check it ourselves?
Yep, that's exactly right. Okay, did I have a hand over here?
I was just wondering what commission's Fleet Karma had.
Okay, great.
Scott, I think you know I'm asking this, but I mean, do you happen to know if Fleet Karma is doing this program with non-utilities?
You know, I don't know if I know of some other utilities they're doing it with. We know where Fleet Karma really started was fleet management. That's where they got onto this, working with people like, you know, UPS type people managing their fleet, and then they got into electric vehicles. So they've done a lot of work with non-utilities. I don't know if they've ever done anything like this with a non-utility. Okay, so we're going to move on here. Mark?
The enrollment site just went live today, so if for those of you who are interested in enrolling tonight, you can do so on your mobile phone. We already have talked with this group tonight. I haven't gotten the official count. Plus the breakfast we had, we're probably at 50, what? 40, okay. So we're over 50 people that we've talked to, and we've got at least another 20 probably that couldn't make it or whatever. So we really want to at least make at least 100 folks aware of the study so that we could at least get to our 50. So we're going to continue to promote through our various channels of communications. As I said, we had the breakfast. We've got those little plugs. You want to make sure you take one or more. If you're out and about and you see somebody with a plug-in vehicle, kind of stick it under their windshield wiper to promote the involvement in the study. And if we get to mid-September and we're not quite at 50, we may start doing some email blasts in zip code areas of town where we know there tends to be more ownership of plug-in vehicles. The Electric Power Research Institute shared with us a heat map of Lincoln. They don't have the names of the owners, but they can tell us that in these zip codes, there's 10 or more. In these zip codes, there's 15 or more. And we would target those areas of town where we have more ownership of plug-in vehicles. But if we don't need to go to that extent and we're already good by mid-September, we may or may not even have to do that. So that's kind of some of the promotions and marketing that we've got coming up.
Will you market in major university and college communities? I would think that would be a community that would really be interested.
Yes, and in terms of, well, in two respects. One is, I think that we would find some owners, faculty and others at the university that may be plug-in drivers. And then as Scott mentioned, we also think this is a learning opportunity to engage students, and one of our current administrative board members is the chair of the is it electrical engineering department. So we've plugged in, so to speak, with the university.
All right, thank you for returning my dongle. You cannot believe, Mark can attest, it was so difficult to get them to give us one of those top secret pieces of equipment. Yes, sir.
Have you reached out to the Chevy or Nissan dealerships to see if they'll...
That's a good segue to introduce Jennifer.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
Great question. And on that question, I'd like to introduce our study coordinator, Jennifer Banger. Jennifer's on the staff. You want to talk to you a little bit about what you've done with the auto dealers in town?
Sure. So I reached out to some of the auto dealers here in town, and we have a letter that we're going to put together, that we have put together, and we're going to have some of the dealerships here in town send out on behalf of LES to the existing customers that they have, as well as the people that would be purchasing new vehicles. So, yeah. Yep. And DJ is here actually. He is one of them that we'll be reaching out to.
First question is, do you want two in the same family? And if so, the second one doesn't come in for another month or two, so I don't know.
Yeah, I talked to him before and knew he was waiting for his new Tesla Model 3, so I knew that question was coming. Yeah. Now, so, Mark and I have talked about this. This is a high-class problem. If we get so many cars that we have to worry about, are they from the same household? That's a high-class problem. If you've got one or more cars in your household that could be in the study, and you've got a primary drive, like it's a primary vehicle for you, so maybe you're driving it, your wife's driving the other one, absolutely we'll take both of them, okay? If you've got, I don't want to name names, but if you've got a fleet of electric vehicles, then what we're probably going to say is, pick the one you drive the most, and that's probably the one we want, right? Because remember, what we're after here is data. And so, hey, if you don't drive your car for a week because you're on vacation, you go on a 3-week vacation, that's perfectly fine. But what we're looking for is somebody who actually drives that car. Because if it's not being driven, not being charged, and then we're not getting the biggest bang for our buck. Okay, so let's look at key dates here. Tonight, this is a key date, right? We got a bunch of people here. We're having this kickoff meeting, and then we start the registration process, trying to get people to apply so we can get them enrolled. That's going to run until November 1st. Now, you're going to see a lot of the marketing stuff's going to say October 15th because we need a little bit of time between October 15th and November 1st. And that's because November 1st is a big day. That's only about 3 months from now. We start collecting this data. This isn't going to happen in the future. This is happening now. And we'll collect that data for 2 years until November 1st of 2020. So it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround. A year from now, we'll almost be having a whole year's worth of data. And after we get 1 year's worth of data, that's probably going to tell us most of the story. But we wanted that second year to kind of sleuth out anything that might be weird, see if we can see trends from 1 year to the next. Okay, so we're going to tie a bow on this now. We talked about there's these 3 initiatives. And we're really trying to put together a puzzle. Can we make sure that LES is educated enough on this to implement the kinds of things that would be beneficial to both the customer that owns an EV and all the other customers that support LES. So here's how all that works together. First, we had that net benefit model. And why is that important? Because that lets us figure out from an economic standpoint how each of those individual vehicles impacts our system. We saw that's a big deal, right? And then Mark talked about the EPRI study. Well, why is that important? Well, it's going to let us understand why more people might adopt these vehicles, and even more importantly to what we're doing, because of that forecast, that projection they're going to give us for growth in Lincoln, when there might be enough of them that we start to feel that in mass, when it's enough to actually move the needle. And then finally, what really puts the bow on it, the cherry on the top, that's this electric vehicle study. Because that lets us refine all those numbers that are in the models. We're going to go back and make a much better shot at how they're going to impact us. And when you couple that with that EPRI projection, we're going to have, for the first time, a really good idea of when we might start to see those impacts. And so you put all that together, it is a car. Did everybody notice it's a car? Okay, I wasted 2 hours of my life making that look like a car, so you need to appreciate that. All that goes together to really help us answer the one question that matters. Only one. What should LES be doing to prepare? You guys already peppered out a bunch of great ideas, and they're all good ideas. But until you know what the numbers look like, what the impacts are, What we really see for load on the system, you can't tell if that's a good idea for all of LES's customer owners or a bad one. That's what we're trying to get to. So that is all the content we've got. Now I'm going to back up quick. Quick's a relative term because we got to go through my car backwards. Okay, there's the website. We kind of got off on a tangent, I didn't mention it. If you want to look at registering, www.fleetkarma.com/LES study. Okay, you can look it up on your phone. We've got a couple of laptops in the back. You can look at it there. It's a simple process to apply. There's about 10 fields. It's going to be all information that you know getting out of bed in the morning. The only part you're not going to know off the top of your head is your LES account number, and we helped you out. We made that optional, okay? I told Mark that's got to be optional because I don't know my LES account number, all right? And I've worked here like 23 years. So you go on there, you fill it all out. It tells you a little bit about the program. You sat here tonight, you pretty much know most of that stuff, but it tells you in a nutshell, gives you an FAQ, so go take a look at that. You fill out those fields, you can read the participation agreement, you can read that privacy policy. We'd love to have you signed up. Okay, we're going to open it back up for questions.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Will that list of data points be available on the Fleet Karma? Because I need to share this with other people in my household.
So, yeah, if you look in the participation agreement, all right, it's a 3-page document that, I'm going to apologize, we all got lawyers, right? So they got a participation agreement. On, I think, towards the top of the second page, there is a list of here's every point that's going to get recorded. And it's a little more wordy, but it's basically that same list I had there. And it does include what I mentioned to you. The VIN number's in there, but it says we don't get the VIN number. So all that stuff is in there. There's really nothing that should happen in this that's not spelled out in that participation agreement. Again, it's 3 pieces of paper. It's really like 2.5 pages. It reads pretty easy. You want to look through that. Yes, sir. Nope, you don't need your LES account number.
It makes it easier to find. So if we have 2 Smiths and the address that you put doesn't match our billing system, the account number certainly will allow us to verify you're an LES. That's the only reason.
But don't feel bad if you don't have it, because some of us might have a running bet going of how many people know their account number.
Oh, I don't.
Okay. It's okay. If we run it, you know what, if you don't know your account number and we can't tell your application from somebody else, we'll call you.
I can find it, it's just, I'm wondering why you guys need it.
Yeah, the only reason we do it is just to make it a little easier to find in our billing system. We just want to confirm that everybody who submits, and you can do it right now on your phone, if you submit your information, it'll make it easier for us to verify that you're an LES customer.
Yeah, because
It's only open to LES customers.
what we will, I'm sure it's quite possible somebody who lives in Omaha but commutes here maybe, but they don't charge here during the day, they're going to maybe hear about the program. And so that's what's going to happen is we're going to look that name up, and if we can't find them in our system, we're going to have to figure that out. And if we don't have an account number, we probably got to call them. But if we have to call them, that's perfectly fine. Yes, sir.
What about those cases where sometimes we do charge here? I'm not an LES account holder, but I drive from Omaha every day, and I charge today in Lincoln. Is that something that you're interested in capturing? Or
So are you an OPPD customer?
Yes.
Okay. So we're actually capturing your data probably because we have, well, if you're using our charging stations, we have 2 dual ports in the green garage. The city has some, they're capturing that data. But that's outside the general scope of what we're trying to do here. We're trying to get it at the vehicle level. So it is open to LES customers only.
When is the area available? Will it only be available at the end, or can we see reports of it in the middle of the site?
No, if you get signed up, and we're going to start collecting that data November 1st, you should be able to start seeing that data after I think about the
You
first
mean the
month.
aggregated?
Yeah.
Oh, the aggregated.
I think it'd be great to have a midpoint party, right? And have everybody
So,
back.
There's 2 things I can guarantee you, okay? One is I will guarantee you we'll have a public meeting like this sometime November, early December-ish next year, because we'll have a full year's worth of data, and we know all you folks and probably a lot of others are going to want to see what that looks like. I can also guarantee you that I can't guarantee you any more than that, but we're working real hard on trying to bring you guys something on a periodic basis. So you'll get to see the aggregate data, because nobody's going to want to wait a whole year to see this come out. So we're working on some stuff, but I can't for sure spill the beans because I don't know for sure what it's going to look like.
For your study, are you under the requirement to do 2 full complete years? So does it get tossed out if there's not 2 complete years? because, you know, people moved out or sold their car or something.
So, good question, good question. I hope everybody heard that. What Paul's talking about is if somebody can't be in for the whole 2 years, right? What we're looking for is somebody that owns their vehicle or has at least 2 years left on their lease, and they intend to be in it for the whole 2 years, all right? So if you told me, hey, I know I'm moving to Albuquerque in 6 months, we're probably not going to sign you up for the program. However, we also know that a lot of people are going to intend to be here for the whole 2 years, and then it's just going to work out that they're not. That's okay. If things come up and you can't be in the program the whole period, that's fine. And you'll still get your credit when you sign up, and when you're done, we'll make sure you get your credit even though you had to leave early. But we're looking for people that hopefully can be in it for the whole 2 years. Because again, that's how we get the most data. Yes, Don?
You're going to have a lot of customers that are going to be changing cars in 2 years. There's a lot of upgrading going on. Do you have any way to handle that?
Yeah, you know, so if somebody says, I've got an electric vehicle, I plan to be in an electric vehicle, but in a year I think it might be a different electric vehicle, that's okay too. I mean, we'll probably talk to you and work through those things, but we understand that might happen. And as long as you're going to plug in, and in a year when you get something else, you're going to plug into that, that's probably all right. Now, obviously, in a perfect world, we'd love to minimize that because it's going to change the data set from 1 year to the next. But we understand those things are going to happen, right? Everybody's got a life.
But that's a good learning, though, too, is how much churn was there, how many people churned into different vehicles during the study period. We also want to point out this is a stake in the ground, but this isn't the end, because this is something we'll have to probably replicate in the future as the technology emerges and develops. We know it's nascent technology, and we know we're not going to get all our answers just this first time around. So we're going to learn how to do this study even better for the next time we do it. So that's important as well. I do want to stress something. We have a fairly limited enrollment time. We really want to get as many people signed up by mid-October as possible, at least 50. So we're really going to be out there promoting, but we hope you're also out there promoting as well, so we can, I really love to get more than 50 so we have a good critical mass.
When we sell or trade our car in, how are you going to recapture your 5? We're going to forget about it.
Well, that would be unfortunate.
The dealer?
We hope that that you'll remember that that little device is under there. We'll have maybe it'll ping the GPS. It's like, why is that in Topeka, Kansas, and just sitting there, right? That is a risk that's part of this study. We'll just.
I can tell you the bigger risk we've heard from Fleet Karma is that people go into their auto shop and they unplug it so they can do diagnostics and they forget to plug it back in. That's not that big a risk because after a few days, Fleet Karma is going to get a hold of you and say, hey, is your device plugged in? And you're probably going to go, oh, I forgot. Go plug it back in and we're good. But that's more than likely.
But plug-in vehicles are low maintenance, so why should they have diagnostics done?
What's that?
Where does it plug in?
Usually, this port is somewhere underneath the steering column. You can usually look under your steering wheel somewhere in there. That's where this port will be. Like I said, every vehicle over the last few decades has this. Teslas are special, so their port's a little different. There's an adapter for that. But other than Tesla, everything else has this port. Okay, Don Cox gives me the evil eye every time I use that joke and say they're a little special. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I have an electric motorcycle. Are you guys interested in capturing that data?
That's the first time we heard that one.
Wow.
Let's talk afterwards.
He'd be an N of 1.
Probably so. Probably
one,
so.
right?
I think we would be.
Electric motorcycle.
I don't know where it plugs in. I don't know if it's rainproof, but I guess we'll find out.
And you'd probably need 2, wouldn't you?
We would need, yeah, that's right, we would need 2. Well, I see a little job going on here. Now, I would imagine, and I got to squeeze this in because we're just coming up 7:05, and before I let you go, before we can hang around and talk about signing up, whatever, how many of you have a smart thermostat at home? An internet-connected thermostat? By a show of hands. Okay. Are you all part of the Peak Rewards program? Okay. We have a program now for smart thermostats that you can sign up and get a $25 enrollment for doing that. And then during the hot summer months, we would adjust your temperature down for a few degrees for a few hours, and then for a couple hours we would adjust it up to help manage our peak. So if you have like a Nest or a Honeywell Lyric or a Honeywell Vision Pro or any of those, you can talk to me about that as well. I just couldn't resist, Scott.
I noticed.
Because this is a group that they're kind of advanced and techie and everything, so that's.
Okay, I think that's probably it. Do you have anything else you want to announce to them? Any other
I would
programs?
announce that Jennifer's going to be back there, and one of us will be back there helping people sign up if they want, but they can do it from their phones as well.
Yeah, we'll be around. You got any questions, just grab one of us, grab Jennifer. If you want to look at it on the laptops, you want help looking at it on your phone, just let us know. Thank you very much. We really appreciate your time coming out tonight.